This conference will now be recorded.
So,
So you know the key variable already has a point on the sheriff's office.
for what?
Well, the engineer's already coming in with finished up.
So,
On your computer, if you're having issues, you know how it shows the reading homework? If you don't allow pop-ups on your computer, it won't pop it up and it just keeps flashing that schedule. So if you press allow pop-ups, it'll pop it up on your computer.
Oh, really?
I did there before you reset mine. My computer was like, my computer date time was right. But on the website, I was like 3 days ahead.
So
So it
weird.
was saying like I'm past due.
Yeah.
Just like I'm gonna go
Yeah.
right now.
No need to freak out. We're expecting to have some like bugs like that, so just let us know if something like that happens.
I
'Cause
was like, do that before
We
I
just,
redid it.
no,
Let's just say I know that material.
Yeah.
that's good.
So, like,
You went over it like 4 times.
I was like, if it's not easy, I'm gonna do that.
Yeah. Oh, good.
But
Yeah, me and technology don't get along, and then
I just think about yourself, figure it out.
me too.
I could figure
Me
it out.
too. Turn it off, then back on again. Restart.
Yeah, I tried.
Mhm.
It was so weird because when I got into it, everything was there.
Yeah.
And I refreshed it.
we
And
have a
it's
guy.
like,
Oh no.
and I was like, I'm like going crazy because we had like a little study group.
Yeah.
It was like Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah, because we looked at the time zone that it's set in, and it was all. He's like, oh, it's what it is, and then we double checked it, and it was fine. So I don't know what happened because it shows like that you had restarted that test, but the other test that you did wasn't even in there.
Alright.
But I was like, if she did it,
I'll
she has
try
all
to,
the notes for
if
it.
we
Like,
can
I'm
hear
not
'em.
concerned. So we'll figure it out.
Whatever year it is, you put the date of this year instead of your birthday. I'll be nosy. I hope you move forward 2025.
Did you sign the medical one?
So there is Wi-Fi here. The Wi-Fi does not have passwords, so you can log into it under your own discretion. Yeah, it's between you and the Lord. We had to kind of jerry-rig some stuff to get Wi-Fi over here to be able to stream all this stuff. But there is Wi-Fi, but it just doesn't have a password. So if you have some super secret FBI stuff on your computer, I'd be careful. Other than that, you should be fine. I don't know how many major hackers we have running around Battle Mountain, but
if everyone in the room was to like log into these old routers we got here, I'm sure it'd crash. So try to keep it like if you absolutely need Wi-Fi, log onto it. If not, try to
yeah, this is kind of our first little run at this. Unfortunately, just because of housing situations, we didn't have some kind of big fancy room to do this in, so we're just kind of making it work. Could be worse. I've seen worse. My EMT class was worse. So yeah, it's we're gonna make it work though. It's gonna be fun.
I think my EMT class was in a closet, so it's fine. All 4 of us.
Sweet. All right,
Awesome.
we ready?
It is 5.
It is 5 o'clock.
Welcome.
Welcome. Yeah. All right. So we have 2 sign-in sheets going around. Both need to be filled out. Make sure you write legibly. We have to turn those into the state for our compliance stuff. One of them is going to be filled out after every class or during every class. So we have to turn in every one of those to the state. We finally got our course ID number. It's right up there at the top right-hand corner. For everybody that sent me emails and text messages because they couldn't get into the state website, that's what you need to get in there. So that should be the last bit of the little puzzle that we needed to be able to get logged into that and start applying for that. So
We're also going to get a sign-in sheet for those in Austin. They have it. Okay, perfect.
Yeah. So
Rebecca, if you could read out the number so that they don't have
Yeah.
to issue that.
All right, it's 25-0902 2021-014. And we'll probably send out an email with it on there too, just so everybody has it and
Yep.
can refer back to it.
All right. Well, welcome. This is our maiden voyage EMT class. Sorry, I sound like a freaking chipmunk right now. My lovely wife was sick a couple of weeks ago. Then I got it, and I've kind of been losing my voice. I'm kind of getting it back. It's a process, but so she's going to be teaching class all day pretty much. I'm just kind of opening everything up. So I guess we need to start out with all the issues everybody's had with the Pearson View stuff. So I know about the issues with the login stuff initially. I think I got everybody logged in that was having issues with, their little Brady Lab access code thing. I think we worked through that process pretty well. I think the only other major issue that we're having is the random disappearance of stuff and the time zone issues. And I'm not really sure where that issue lies. So I know that I'm going to call Pearson and try to figure that part out. Everything looks good on our end. All the time zones and everything are correct on our side. So I don't know why it's doing that. So if y'all do run into that, shoot me a text message and I can manually open it back up for whoever has that issue. And then let y'all finish whatever you need to for, the next however many hours it takes. The homework assignment that y'all are seeing, that's not supposed to be a thing. So I don't know why y'all are seeing it. There's only supposed to be 2 assignments that y'all see on y'all's end, the pre-test and the reading. So that homework assignment thing, I don't know why that's even popping up on y'all's end. It's not assigned on our end. It shows unassigned. So y'all aren't even supposed to be able to see that. So I know that's an issue because people are saying that it's like kicking them out and they're getting halfway done and it's affecting their grade and stuff like that. And I don't want that to happen. So I can go in and manually change all of that. But it's not even supposed to have, like, the way we got it set up on our side, it's not even supposed to show up on your grade. Even if you got it done, it's supposed to zero that whole thing out. So I don't know. I'm going to work on those processes over the next couple of days. But I just want to make sure I worked on all of it at the same time. So is there anything else that people are running into that's super major? And
I had an issue with one of the quizzes too that I want you to look at because they won't allow me to click an answer.
Okay.
So when I try to click it or exit out and go back into it, it'll move me to the next question, but it won't allow me to go back to answer it. So it's like a blank question and then it will say that I did not pass that question.
Does it
Okay.
freeze on you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that one time.
Which part?
Answer and then it just loads and go away. Yeah, I had to
Okay.
exit out of it.
And then I got back into it, and then it just kicked me to the next one, so it didn't allow me to go back and actually put the right answer. So that answer was blank.
Okay. So
once it won't let you go backwards or go to other questions until the answer.
Yeah, and that's what I
So
tried.
you gotta exit out, answer all the questions, and put that on the side. Question this.
Yeah, I tried that too.
Because
That error
Really?
will pop up.
it won't let you go back either.
The first test I clicked through just to look at the questions.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what's on here? And then
Sure.
Okay.
I missed the first four.
Okay.
Okay. So there's going to be a lot of redundancies here because we're going to be repeating a lot of stuff back for the folks out in Austin. So I guess they're saying that they are having issues where the questions aren't allowing them to answer them, and then they're not able to go back. Like I said, if anybody has any other major issues, let me know. I'm going to try to address them all with Pearson at the same time. I've been dealing out there in Pearson. I'm ready to choke them folks. I don't like technology. I was born into the wrong era of people, but we're trying to work through it as best we can. And I'm going to contact them. And yeah, I don't know. I guess that's the only other major issue. Any other issues? No, everything else got ironed out. Cool.
I was going to say, if you guys have your signed papers, if you could pass them up to the front. There should be another sheet. What's that?
You just want the paper itself without it.
you could just give me the whole packet. If you want to keep the syllabus just so you can look at it for future reference, that's fine too. I just need the sign sheet, but whatever you want to give me. There's another sheet floating around. It's like a roster kind of. I just wanted to make sure everybody's name was on there, that their email was correct, and you have the correct email on there. And then there should be an X. If I have your signed papers already, there should be an X on there. So if you just double check, if you're like, hey, I already gave them all that stuff. So that's floating around. If it doesn't make it to you, come up here later. We'll get it all figured out. Thank you.
And if there is an X by your name and you hadn't turned it in, that was just a mistake on our end. So just shoot it up here and we'll rectify those issues too.
Whose all email was it saying wasn't an email? Was it Smith's and Joe?
Yeah, it's Smith and Joe's
Okay.
emails I was having issues with, but
yeah, it was saying that your guys' email didn't exist or something. So we'll double check it on our end.
Have you got any of my emails? Have you? Huh? Are you Nick? Your inbox is full. That's what it tells me every time. It sends me an email back and says that your inbox is full. So yeah, I don't know.
Like the address I got from Mr. I already knew where this was.
Yeah.
Huh.
The next big topic, I guess. Did everybody have fun with all the work? It's a lot, right? The first couple of weeks are kind of daunting. There's a lot of just nonsense that we have to go over, but it's going to be a consolidated process. There's going to be a lot to get done in the next 3 months. It's going to take a lot of effort on y'all's end. We've been putting in a lot of effort on our end because like these PowerPoints are all built. None of these PowerPoints, when we order these books, they send us a whole bunch of PowerPoints, and we're not using any of them. We're building all of our own PowerPoints. We're building this whole class. All the homework and stuff that you see are all stuff that we've built. So we're putting in a lot of effort on our side. It's just going to have to be reciprocated. It's going to be a lot of information. It's going to be a lot of work. There's going to be a lot to get done in the next 3 months. So just buckle up, and we'll get through it. I mean, it'll be fun. We're gonna have a good time. The whole reason why we built these is because we've consolidated these PowerPoints, where today probably we would have been looking at, 300 PowerPoints over the next, 2.5 hours. And we've consolidated them, or she's consolidated them down to where you're only looking at maybe 100, right? So we've really tried to pick out the important information, and there's a lot of process that goes into that, but it's just going to have to be reciprocated. You're going to have to do the reading. You're going to have to do the studying on y'all's end, the homework, all that stuff. It's going to have to be grinded out. This isn't, just a class you can kind of sit around and dick off and expect to get through it, because this part's going to be the easy part. When you get to the National Registry test, I could sit here and fumble dick you through this whole class and you can get through it, right? But when you get to the National Registry class or the National Registry test, you're going to fail the piss out of it. I can tell you that right now. If you don't believe me, ask people that's taking this test. It's not easy. It's not going to be, just walking there and Christmas tree some answers and kick your way through it. It's a hard test. So, and they set it up for failure. That's the reason why their pass rate's like 60%. So just be mindful. You're going to have to put in some work to get through this class, especially the back end of it whenever you get ready to test. So,
and I will say, whenever you guys do your pre-tests, don't be afraid to, you don't understand a question or you have questions, if anything, please feel free to bring it up. Because I'm sure if you have a question on it, somebody else is going to have the same question. So if you want to take notes on those tests or whatever, or however you want to do it, and then come bring it to class, we would be more than happy to help you all, because it's a learning curve for all of us, right? So
yeah, there's no such thing as a stupid question. We believe in asking questions, so if you have them, ask them. We're not going to tell 8,000 war stories every class, because we'll be here till 11 o'clock at night every day. But if you have questions, ask, and we'll find you an answer. If we can't answer it, then I'm sure somebody in this room can, because there's a lot of time in this room. I mean, just between the 6 folks you got standing up over here, I mean, you've got, frick, close to 40 years, 40, 45 years worth of experience in this. So, yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll get through it. We're going to have a good time.
Yeah.
So, well, this is my favorite part of the class. Everybody hates it. I don't care. So, oh, CJ's back here. I didn't count him. So now we got like 80 years. So we're going to do a little icebreaker. Everybody gets to introduce themselves. I know that's everybody's favorite part of class. So I guess we'll start it out. My name's Chaz Hutto. I'm a paramedic in Lander County. I've only been here for 8 months. My wife drug me out here. I come from Atlanta. I worked in Atlanta on an ambulance for about 4 years. I worked in a couple of different services around Georgia. I was a firefighter before that. Don't judge me, I know. But I was a firefighter for about 4 or 5 years before that. I've got almost a decade in it altogether. Before that, I drove trucks. I got all fat and sad, so I had to find something else to do. So my whole family does this. My dad's an EMT. My uncle's a medic. My mom's a dispatcher. My brother's a cop. My mom's wife's a cop. My whole family does this. We really enjoy it. And that's kind of what pushed me into it. I thought that I wanted to do it when I was young, and I was 18, and then I had a kid, and I had to pay bills, and didn't have time to go to school. So I had to go some other routes and pay bills. So I waited a little bit longer. I got into this when I was like 26 and kind of transitioned over into it full time. When I started out at the fire department, I swore away in the ambulance. I was like, I'm never going to do that. It's stupid. Freaking go pick up grandma at 2 o'clock in the morning and take her to the hospital. It's dumb. I want to do that. And then I started doing it, and I really enjoy it. I rode as an EMT, and my first call ever as being a paid employee of a 911 service was a cardiac arrest. And so that's how my career started, and that's kind of how it went from there. And I enjoy it. I love it. This is not a job that you get into and you're like, well, I got my license, and then call it quits. This is a job that you get into and you learn for the rest of your life if you stay in it. If you stop learning, you need to stop riding an ambulance or stop being on mine rescue or being at the fire department, sheriff's department, whatever. You need to stop and at least give up your EMT license, because this isn't a job that you can just one and done it and call it quits. Because even as an EMT, I know everybody, God praises paramedics, but even as an EMT, me and her rode in Atlanta together as EMTs for 2.5 years. And we ran more cardiac arrest in that city for 2 years than anybody else. And I've got certificates to prove it. So you can make a big difference as an EMT. Your life, or what the decisions that you make whenever you run calls, can decide on whether somebody goes back home to their family or not. So don't take it as a joke. It is very, very serious. And you can be the deciding factor on whether somebody gets to see another day or not. So, yeah, that's me.
That's it. My name is Becca Hutto. I started out in Idaho. Actually wanted to be a little nurse. I was so excited. My junior year of high school, I was like, yeah, best nurse ever. So I started the EMT class my senior year of high school. My very first ride along, I had a dude struck by a train, and I was like, okay, this is what I'm doing now. So started out on the ambulance there, worked in Idaho for about 5 years, got my advanced EMT. It was cool. I always wanted to work for a big city, and then I finally got the opportunity to go to Atlanta. So then I moved down there, got my paramedic. This year in May was actually going to be my decade anniversary of being in EMS. So it makes me feel so old.
Yeah.
But here we
She
are.
looks like a baby, but she ain't.
Here we are, 10 years in. I've taught a couple EMT classes. I've taught a couple AEMT classes, some CPR. One thing I have learned in my teaching endeavors is that I'm just as much of a student as you guys are. So if you guys ever come to me with a question, I don't know the answer, I would love to help figure it out, right? So that's pretty much it. My life's not too exciting, except for
You got chickens.
I do have chickens. I like chickens. All right, well, so we'll start over here. If you want to start, name, why you're taking this EMT class, and
Yeah, just tell us
Anything
about
else?
yourself.
Yeah, tell us about yourself. You can stand.
There you go. Stand up.
Stand up. Yeah, I like it.
Jonathan Bell, beyond Island Fire Style Selection Thursday out there. We had 4 or 5 red medicals. Plus, no, just keep it low before that.
Give him the mic.
Oh,
Cool.
yeah. Here, we're gonna pass this along. So you talking to the mic. Y'all get these recorded?
Our folks on the mic. Yeah.
Billy Adams, also working with the BLM and Wildland Fire. Just trying to broaden our qualifications on our truck, just to help out.
Cool.
My name's Annie Prone. I work at Marigold currently. I'm a truck driver, but I joined the mine rescue team. And I just want to learn and I want to help people.
I like
And
it.
that's it.
You're in the right place.
My name's Christian Estrada. I also work at Marigold as an equipment operator. I've been on mine rescue for 7 years now, and it's a really cool thing to do. A lot of people use it to make extra money and, kind of look like they're badasses at work, I guess. But no, it's really fun. If you learn every day and you do what you're supposed to do, it's fun. And I would say learning is really cool, the books and all that stuff, but being out in the field is a different thing. I would say work on your mental status big time, and you're being able to be calm, I think, is one of the biggest things, because when you're not calm and you get things out of hand, everything's just going to be out of hand. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Hi, my name is Liam Mossy. I work out at Marigold as well. I'm in process maintenance. A little bit of a brief history. My mom, she's a MA at one of the clinics down in my hometown. My dad was an EMT, so my whole family's been kind of part of this. I just been kind of raised up in it and grown to like it. I was on the fire department in my hometown for a year before I moved up here to Northern Nevada. And I just want to further my education and keep going as far as I can.
My name's Amanda Schrimzer, and I work at Marigold as well. I work at the truck shop as administrative assistant. I had my EMR when I worked at Hecla. Then I went and joined Marigold and joined their ERT. And I also am part of the Golconda Fire Protection District, one of their firefighters. I started that just a little bit after started ERT. I felt that the once a month training just wasn't enough. I wasn't getting enough, and I got into this to help people, and I want to know what I'm doing when the emergency occurs. So that's why I'm here.
So awkward. Hi, I'm Isabel. I also work at Marigold. I work in the lab, so it's a lot of like chemistry and math. I was gonna get my PhD in psychology, but a lot of the rules changed, and they changed it to like an arts degree instead of a science degree. I would rather get a degree in like 2 bachelors than 13 years getting underpaid. So I found myself in mining, and I just love to learn, and this was like a great opportunity for me to do, because the more you learn, the more opportunity you're going to get in the future. So I'm just excited about this class, excited about the opportunity that we're even able to do this with the mine. So yeah.
My name's Joe. I'm with the sheriff's office. The majority of our calls are medicals, so I figured I would probably learn how to help out a little bit more when I'm on scene.
Typical cop thing over here. He's going to sit down to talk. My name's Steve Smith. I've been with the sheriff's office for 17 years. We respond to everything before everybody else. That was really prevalent back before we had a full-time ambulance service. And I just want to learn a little bit more so I can bring a little bit more when I am initial responder.
Nick Hawley, work at Marigold as well. I run equipment, mostly dozer.
I've seen some people die in mining. I've seen some people get hurt. So I kind of want to learn some skills to help some people if I have to. I was at Cortez when the guy got smashed and he popped. So definitely want to be able to help someone if I can.
Sure.
I'm Andy Wall, and I'm a seasonal wildland firefighter at the BLM. And I want to take this class because my mom and my father both were EMTs, and I was just inspired by them.
My name is Alex Wall, and I'm taking this class because my whole family kind of became paramedics and stuff. So it would be easier for me to take this class than just to not. But I also like opportunity because as a paramedic, you can get a job anywhere. So yeah.
My name's Scott Wall, and I'm working at a BLM fire. And as my other two brothers have mentioned, actually all of our family's been in medical, so it's been kind of a good helping start to kind of figure out what I can do in fire and how many people I can help.
Name's Michael Lake. I work as a physical therapist here. I enjoy helping people and learning. My sister's a paramedic. My brothers took the EMT course, but then went another direction. But figured it was a good opportunity. So,
My name's Jade Smith. I'm safety and health admin out at Turquoise Ridge. I've gone back and forth from wanting to take EMT the last year, and this class was presented to me, so I decided to take the chance. We're also working on building our mine rescue team as it's very small out there, so this was a great opportunity.
This is nerve wracking.
Yeah. I'm Carly Peterson, and I watched my brother overdose when I was 18, and I didn't know what to do, and I didn't like feeling helpless. So I'm finally taking the chance and opportunity to learn how to help people.
My name is Garrett Snellings. I'm a mechanic and fleet manager for Lynx Enterprise here in town. Also a volunteer firefighter here in town. My dad's EMT, also here in town, and my sister's a paramedic firefighter in Tempe, Arizona. So just following in the footsteps.
My name's Alyssa Harris. I'm just a stay-at-home mom right now, so just trying to find some purpose and stimulate my brain a little bit, continue my education. So that's why I'm taking this class.
You say just a stay-at-home mom, like just.
Yeah, she got the hardest job out of all of us.
Yeah.
All right. So we have walks of life from all over the place, right? Mine, sheriff, stay-at-home mom. She's the hardest worker out of all of us, to be honest. But yeah. So I mean, we're all here for kind of the same purpose, right? We want to do something different, and we want to be able to help people. I know that's kind of a generic answer a lot of times, but this really is a job where you can make a significant difference, and whether somebody's okay or they're not. Whether you're at the mine, the sheriff's department showed that recently. They ran a call with us, and they did absolutely fantastic, and somebody was able to come back home because of it. And that doesn't change, right? Like, it doesn't matter if you're at the mine with the sheriff's department or you're sitting at the house with your kids. Take the class serious. If you don't want to take it serious, that's cool. I respect it. If we get in, 2 or 3 weeks and you're like, hey, this ain't for me, I respect that wholeheartedly. I respect that a lot more than somebody that dicks off all the way through class and then, ends up killing the crap out of somebody later on, because it's not going to sit well on you. Speaking of the mental health stuff, next week you're going to see a PowerPoint that I built that I'm going to be presenting. I am a critical incident stress management provider. I've taken CISM classes. I do stress debriefings. critical incident debriefing, stuff like that. So next week we're going to do a personal mental health class because that has to be something that we touch on. Unfortunately, in these books, they just don't really talk about it a lot. I'm a big advocate for it. As somebody that has been on the highs and lows of this job, seeing stuff that, have brought me to tears, I can tell you that the mental health aspect of it will drive you out of it quicker than anything else. You hurt your back and hurt your knees, and we pick up chunky folks all the time, and that stuff will take you out. But if you don't take care of yourself, it'll take you out quicker than anything. So we're going to do that next or Thursday. Don't expect a test over it. It's nothing like that. So when you see some weird PowerPoint up here that you don't know about, it's fine. It's just me rambling, and hopefully I can talk a little bit better by then. So yeah.
All right. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves real quick, and then we can take a quick break?
My name is Jenny Corbett. I've been in EMS for about 5 years now. Last year I got my paramedic license, and I work here full time for London County.
Come on, pretty boy.
I'm Marcus Jury.
This is our pretty boy.
About my partner over here and there. I'm getting to learn with teammate.
There you go. Beautiful.
That's about it.
My name's Calvin. I'm an ambulance driver. That's about it.
He's probably going to be teaching our neurological section. I'll let him short sell.
Doctor?
He's Dr. Calvin.
Yeah.
So.
I'm CJ Safford. If we got the right distance for that. Yeah. Assistant director. And I've seen about every phase of EMS, from being a basic, advanced, paramedic, and really the people that save lives, the ones that are on the street really rescuing people. I'm sorry, this is throwing me off.
I can hear it.
Is the basic people. You can tell when you first meet a medic whether or not they did well in their basic EMT class, because those are the ones that are really getting the job done. Then you have these like fanatical paramedics that go out there, they study every day, they have like every advanced history type of test taking procedure in the book, but if they don't know their basic stuff, they're not doing a good job. So I want to emphasize, take this class seriously.
All right. So you'll see. Oh, sorry, Mike. Okay.
Everybody knows.
Yeah, everyone knows Mike.
What's up, guys? I'm Mike Harris. I'm the director here at Lander County EMS. I want to shout a couple folks out real quick. We have 3 people in Austin that we can't see that are taking this class, and they're doing it for the betterment of their community, just like we are. So I want to shout them out. Kim Shaw is our other assistant director lead down there, and she's helping facilitate this down here. So I want to make sure she gets a good shout out too, because she's doing a great job. Couple things. That's my wife back there. So, if you heard Mike Harris, Alyssa Harris, yeah, that's my wife back there. So yeah. If you got any complaints about me, take it to her first, because she'll wrangle me in better than anybody else. And lastly, I've been a paramedic a while too. I've been doing this a little bit too. So when you guys all talked about your why, we talked about this before this class started, and I want you to think about that when things get hard, because this class is going to get hard, right? When you're tired of the homework, when your kids are driving you crazy, when you're tired of work and you still got to come home and do the homework and stuff, your why is the only thing that's going to carry you through, right? And realistically, your why at the end of the day is going to be, you either have the skill set to save somebody or you don't. And if you don't, that will haunt you. So put your best foot forward, give these instructors everything you have. And, at the end of the day, you give it everything you have, you're going to have a good outcome in this class. When you test out National Registry, it's either going to be one of the best days or worst days of your life. Let's make it the best.
It's the worst day of your life.
The test sucks, but if you pass it, you'll be feeling like $1 million. You'll be feeling like Dr. Lake back there in them tight jeans. Nah, but your legs fill them out, bro. You look good. What is my why? Oof. Man. So my why is a little bit different. So I almost didn't graduate high school. I was an idiot, man. I didn't take nothing seriously. It was about a week after I graduated. that my dad actually went into cardiac arrest in our front lawn. Okay, I was 18 years old. I didn't know anything. So he went into cardiac arrest, which you'll learn about cardiac arrest. That means he died, right? So my mom was on the phone with 911. I had him because I just recently went back in and looked at the logs of when he died. I had him for 5 minutes to myself, and I did not do CPR, right? So that's a moment that now, at almost 30 years old, 3 kids, a beautiful wife, a good career, still haunts me. So as I was going through, I started working at the mine. They said, hey, you don't have to be at the mine. We'll pay you to go to the EMT class. I didn't want to be an EMT. I didn't care. But I didn't want to be at the mine. So I went to the EMT class. Halfway through my EMT class, my instructor said, bro, you suck. You're not putting in any effort. I'm going to kick you out. Praise Dr. Ellis. I said, Dr. Ellis, please give me another chance. I don't want to go back to the mine. That was terrible. So he let me go through. And then I ended up getting into the advanced EMT class. At that time, I was actually sitting around a table, and I was working for Lander County EMS part-time. And I was actually wanting to get into law enforcement. And my good friends that were around that table were telling me about these EMTs and these paramedics that were taking shortcuts because they're burnt out. Come to find out, one of the calls they took shortcuts on was my dad. So if I start to cry, you look away. You understand? Everybody. So one of the calls was my dad that they were taking shortcuts on. That was the day that I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to paramedic school and I'm going to be the best damn paramedic anyone's ever seen. Turns out that's not going to happen because there's some pretty damn good medics out there. But that was my why, right? And when I have a bad day and I'm struggling and I'm tired and I want to take shortcuts, I reflect back to that moment because some kid somewhere has their dad going through that, and they deserve my why to be the reason that I'm giving everything. And that's what I expect out of you guys. Okay? Fair? All right.
What do you mean by shortcuts, big leg?
Yeah, the story for a different time, brother.
Yeah. So I mean that's a big thing, right? Is you're gonna do this, whether you're mine rescue, whether you're PD, whether you're just trying to help out, you're gonna do this and you're gonna find really, really good paramedics and EMTs. The people that you have standing up here, not me, I'm kind of retarded, but the rest of these folks are great, right? They're awesome EMTs, awesome paramedics, fantastic humans. And then you're going to find the opposite end of that spectrum. You're going to find the people that show up that you wouldn't want to take your freaking half dead dog to, right? And much less somebody that is in your family, your mom, dad, brother, or sister. So don't be those. Because if you are, I'm going to judge the crap out of you. I can tell you that right now. I'm the nicest person in the world. I know a couple of people have ran calls with me, and I can be the nicest person in the world. I can also be an absolute dick. So take it serious, and I'll continue to be nice. She's the nice one. That's the reason why we balance each other really well, because she's really nice, and I'm kind of a dick sometimes. So it works out.
So you'll see a couple extra people pop in here and there throughout the class. Most of them are like people that we work with. I'm sure you guys have met them. If not, they'll introduce themselves. They're going to be very helpful. Whenever you guys start doing your ride-alongs, they're the people to ask questions. So we'll go ahead and take a 5-minute break. Bathrooms down this hallway. You can go either around or right through here. And whenever we get back, we'll start on chapter 1.
That's your papers up here, your signed documents up here, and your the sign-in sheets. Has everyone signed in on both sign-in sheets? Yes. Okay, perfect.
Oh, I had a hole in my mouth.
This conference will now be recorded.
Thing on.
Probably not.
It buzzes.
Yeah.
He didn't use them.
All right.
Is it working?
Yeah, I think so. I think
You
we're
clear?
missing one person. Maybe 2.
Oh yeah, she's on the toilet.
Okay. All right, we'll wait for her to get back, and then we'll start. I will warn you, these first few chapters are like, blah. But we're gonna get through them. We condensed them instead of 100 slides each. It's about 20.
Oh, there is?
So yeah, this one's the same one as this one. This one's just full. So, yeah, that's fine. We'll figure it out eventually. Once we start getting into like the skills part of things, it's not going to be so much PowerPoint. But these first few chapters, there's no skills on.
And there's going to be a lot of stuff in this class that you learn that you've been told all your life. Like you put everybody on backboards. We don't do that no more. So There's gonna be a lot of stuff that you learn in this class that kind of contradicts some stuff that you've learned in the past, and it's mainly because we're not in the 90s anymore, so things change. Medicine updates, so it's gonna be fun. We're gonna have a good time.
Yeah. All right. Is everybody back? Awesome. Okay. So chapter 1, intro to EMS. Hopefully everybody has this book. Is anybody having any trouble seeing any of this? No. Okay. All right. So we're going to start out all of our PowerPoints with some objectives. These are just kind of like good points to kind of go back to and hopefully review everything, hit all the main points. Like I said earlier, these pre-tests that you guys take, some of them are going to be very similar to the post-test that you take. So please pay attention. Please come with questions. It's going to make it better for everybody if somebody comes with questions, right?
But again, we make all of these tests, so there's no guarantee that the questions that you see on the pre-test and these post-tests are going to be the same. And so don't rely just on the pre-test for your only study guide, because there's a good chance that those tests are going to be completely different. They may be the same, they may be different. You just don't know.
All right, so our objectives for today, review how EMS began. Obviously, there was a starting point somewhere. Learn the components of the EMS system, learn the rules and responsibilities of EMTs, and then define roles of EMS in public settings. So I heard someone earlier say, once you get your paramedic, you can pretty much go do anything that you want to do, be anywhere. There's jobs for paramedics everywhere. You could be in an ER if you want to. You can be on ambulance if you want to. Wilderness, you can do ski. You said ski patrol or something. So your possibilities really are endless once you get your EMT license. So we're going to go through the little bit of the timeline of EMS. This is mostly going to be test question stuff. I know for my NREMT, there was a few questions about timeline of EMS. So some of these dates are good to remember, or some of these like points that we bring up, we'll kind of touch on them a little bit. So the 1790s was the earliest documented. The French is actually what started the transport of wounded soldiers. Then we went into the Red Cross era. So we have the Civil War. This lady named Clara Barton. I hope that's how you say it. Also, I'm going to warn you, I suck at names. And I suck at pronouncing names. So if I pronounce your name wrong, I apologize thoroughly. She started the Red Cross, said, hey, everybody come help. We went into World War I with the Volunteer Ambulance Corps. And then we went to the Vietnam War. So the Vietnam War is really where they decided, like, hey, we should have specialty centers that we're bringing these patients to. So like you look at today's EMS, we have specialty centers where we bring our certain patients, right? So you have stroke centers, you have trauma centers, and we'll go into that a little bit further. But I will say it one more time. The Vietnam War is where it started. Non-military ambulances in the 1900s. So instead of, an ambulance rolling up to your front door, this thing right here, I do have a pointer. This thing right here rolled up to your front doors. So the old meat wagon is what they said. So EMS today obviously is a little bit different than what it used to be. We've kind of standardized how we're getting our licenses, the training. There's certain points that everybody that becomes an EMT, AEMT, paramedic, they all need to hit these standards. And that's where the National Registry comes in. So you guys have heard us talk a little bit about this National Registry. Pretty much to sum it up in few words, it's a giant test that you guys are going to take at the end of this class. It's going to be on a website. And once you guys pass the test, you'll have a National Registry number. So what that'll do is that's going to make you a, certified EMT that you can go to whatever state you want to go. There are some states that after you get your NREMT and you get your initial state license, you don't have to keep up with your NREMT. I'm not sure if Nevada is one of those states. I know Idaho was.
Your National Registry here?
No.
So Nevada, you don't have to. Yeah. I would always suggest that you keep your NREMT because it really sucks if you lose it. You have to retest back into it rather than doing like a certain number of recertification hours. you have to take the test again, which nobody wants to do that. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is what sets our standards, regulations, and policies, which is kind of weird to think about because you think like, do they have anything to do with medicine? Why are they setting these standards, right? But here they are. That's not very big. But these are the components of the EMS system. So some of it is kind of common sense, right? So you have your patient, whoever is going to be calling 911, whoever that may be. You can have phone 911, you can have text 911. People have little medical alerts. I'm sure you guys have all seen the commercials, the help, I've fallen and I can't get up, the little buttons. Those are all a component of the EMS system. We have our dispatchers, which most dispatchers are trained to be able to take a 911 call and advise whoever is calling 911 to treat that situation accordingly. So if someone calls and says, hey, my brother's not responsive, not breathing, they have training to be able to walk them through how to start CPR, how to begin those life-saving practices. After that, we have our emergency medical responders. I feel like this category kind of goes into like your EMRs, your first on scenes, your PD, anybody that might be rolling by and rolls up and kind of helps. And then you have your EMTs, which is us, which you guys are training to be. Your emergency department staff, which you're going to hear a little bit of, there's kind of this like weird power struggle going on between like the staff in the ER and EMS. I feel like it's not so bad out here, but if you go to a big city, there's going to be a little bit of a power struggle. My advice to you, if you ever come in contact with a situation where you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to deal with this person today. One of the best things you can do is just kind of take a step back, look at it from a third point of view and be like, hey, you know, they're doing their job. I'm doing my job. Let's just work together for the best outcome for this patient. And then this last one is allied health staff. So that's going to be like your specialty care. So wherever your patient goes after the emergency room, whether it's monitoring, cath lab,
ICU,
yeah, those kinds of things. Even like nursing homes, those fall under that allied health staff. So our specialty centers that we were talking about. So around here, we kind of don't have a lot of options. Once you get closer to a city, you're going to see a little bit more. But our trauma centers. So does anybody know our closest trauma center to us right here?
In California?
Renown, yeah.
So there's levels though.
Yeah.
And Renown is considered a level 2 trauma center. And really there's only like a couple of criteria, which is like teaching hospital, burn capabilities, a couple of minor things that make a difference between a level 2 and a level 1. Now, it's not going to determine your quality of care between hospitals because, as we have recently learned, Renown kind of sucks, but I digress.
So whenever we start doing like scenarios and stuff, this is where this is going to come into play. So a lot of scenarios, whenever you are presented in the scenario situation, there's going to be a sentence at the beginning that's like, you're 10 minutes from your closest critical access hospital. You're 45 minutes from a burn center and your patient's burned to crap and back. Where are you going to take them? Like these kinds of things is where it comes into play. Pediatric centers, cardiac centers. So they're going to deal with like your STEMIs, your weird heart blocks. If anybody needs any specialty cardiac care, that's usually where they're going to go. And then our stroke centers. So the big one out here, between cardiac and stroke centers, Battle Mountain doesn't have, like, they can't go in and fix a stroke and they can't go in and fix a heart attack. So we have to know like what our closest is and the best way to get them to that hospital. So around here, it's a little bit different of a dynamic than if you were like plopped down in the center of Reno or Salt Lake or somewhere in California that's really close to these centers. So there's just another layer of decision making that comes with knowing what hospitals do what and where you need to take your patient and how you need to get your patient there. Does that make sense? Cool.
our end goal is get them where they need to go. Because, you know, if somebody's shot, they don't need to go to Battle Mountain. They need to go to a trauma center. So that's your end goal, is how to get them there as effectively as possible.
Because you don't want to take somebody to a closer hospital just because it makes you more comfy, whenever what is best for that patient is actually going to be trauma care, but you don't want to delay that trauma care just because you're uncomfortable, right? So we talked about this, obviously accessing the 911 system. I feel like everybody in this room probably knows how to access the 911 system. We talked about a little bit earlier, there's our services where you can text to 911, the medical alert bracelets, you can call 911, those kinds of things. Some public places have little buttons that you can go push on like telephone poles. Our dispatchers, we talked a little bit about the trained dispatchers, so they can help talk whoever is on scene through that initial care, even if it is the patient themselves, right? So like say you cut your leg and you call 911 and they're going to ask you very specific questions as to how bad are you bleeding? Is it from a dangerous body area? And they're going to be able to direct that caller through that first step of care until EMS gets there, right? Because we don't live in a perfect world. We all don't live 2 minutes from an ambulance station. And sometimes that is really the difference between life and death for some people, right? We have our levels of EMS training. So this has kind of changed over the years. There's certain things that used to be called one thing and now they're called another. And I'm sure it's going to change again in 2 years. We have our EMR and then our EMT, which is what you guys are going to be. Used to be called EMT Basic. They're kind of straying away from that. You're not going to run into everybody that's not calling it an EMT Basic. There's still going to be a few out there that are like, oh, EMT Basic. But technically, it's just EMT. We have our Advanced EMT, which it used to be called Intermediate or EMTI. And as these change, as the names of these certifications change, sometimes their scope of practice changes as well. So that's another thing that's important with this NREMT, is that once you get your NREMT, you have so many hours of recertification that you need to do. So it's not like, as Chaz said, it's not like you get your license and then you're done. They kind of force you to keep training yourself and keep learning because things are going to change. And AHA, the people that overlook the CPR guidelines of medicine across the board, they change theirs every 2 years. So just expect that there to be change in healthcare. And then paramedic, the gold patch that everyone's like, ooh, gold patch. We used to be called EMT paramedics. Now we're just called paramedics, I guess. That red doesn't show up well on this. Noted. So roles and responsibilities of the EMTs. Obviously, personal safety is going to be number one. We can't help somebody if we are in, hurt ourselves. So that's going to be a huge thing whenever we start going through these skills and you guys kind of get your hands on some of these skill sheets that we're going to give you as a guideline. The first thing on there is BSI scene safety. So that's always something that you want to be able to look for whenever you guys are doing any kind of scenario, any kind of real life, anything, as you're walking up to a scene or even as you get dispatched to a scene, to kind of run that through your head. Like, is this going to be safe for me to go into? Like a hazmat situation where there's chemicals everywhere. Are you trained to go in there? If you're not, you need to contact the correct people. Yeah. So patient assessment and care. Patient assessment is like my biggest pet peeve. Whenever you guys start doing your ride-alongs and you start riding with me specifically, I'm sure that other people probably have the same mindset. I'm a stickler on whether you're putting your hands on your patient or not, because a lot of the time we learn assessments all the time in EMT school, and then you go out in the field and the real patient's sitting in front of you and you're scared to death and you don't put your hands on them. So look, listen, feel. We're going to assess our patients. Another one I really want to touch on is patient advocacy. What does that mean to somebody? Does someone want to kind of go into what they feel like patient advocacy is? Anybody? I need my cup of doom. Yeah, exactly. So, couple examples of that. You show up and you feel like the patient needs certain care. The patient's not getting that care. You're going to speak up so they can get the right care, right?
You'll run into that a lot working around the cities where these nurses are burnt out, hospital staff's burnt out. You go in these hospitals and you're like, no, this patient needs this. And they're like, and you're like, no, like, and you need to find somebody that is willing to listen to you because, again, it can make a difference on whether they go home or not.
Absolutely.
I'm a big stickler on the working with other public safety professionals. We joke around about everybody, right? You'll see me. I know I joke with the sheriff's department all the time. You know, I pick at them. I pick at the firefighters when I see them. But at the end of the day, you know, we're professionals working with other professionals, and you need to give those professionals the same respect you expect them to give you. All right. You know, I don't expect somebody like Smith, who's never taken an EMT or a paramedic class, to walk up and be able to identify a patient who's having an asthma attack, right? Like, that's just not what I expect. After this class, I should expect that. But right now, while he's never been able to take these classes, I don't expect that. So when I walk in and he looks at me and goes, yeah, they're having a hard time breathing. That's what I expect, right? Show them that level of respect. They have not gone through these classes that you have. Understand that they might not be trained to the level that you are. Give them respect, listen to them, and then, you know, take what they have to say and then do your own assessments.
Yeah. Just to touch on that too, like I always tell people my favorite people to work with or my favorite people to have ride with me are people that are fresh out of school because they always have brand new ideas. Because, you know, I went to EMT school a decade ago. So all the stuff I learned, because medicine's always changing, they're going to come to me with new information too. So, you know, and if there is anything that you ever run into where you're like, I feel like we should have done this and this should have happened, like, do not hesitate to bring it up because it can always be a learning experience for everybody. All right, critical decision making, we touched on just a little bit ago. This comes in a lot of aspects of EMS, any kind of response. So between what you're going to do for your patient, how your patient is presenting, where you're going to take your patient to, these are all things that if you are horrible at decisions, this is something you're going to need to work on to be in this field. Sometimes, you know, you have two situations in front of you. You could go down this way, you could go down this way. Being able to decipher between the two what's going to be best for your patient, it can be a little bit stressful. Again, assess. That's a big one. I'm pretty sure I put a bunch of exclamation points in there a few times in this PowerPoint. But yeah. All right, so some traits of a good EMT. We'll just kind of like bounce around some ideas out there. What kind of traits do you think a good EMT might have?
Good listener.
Yes, good listener. I like it. Anybody else?
Stays up to date with everything that changes.
Good. Yeah, stays up to date with everything that changes.
Personal hygiene.
Personal hygiene is a big
don't
one.
stink and go to work.
Yeah, please. We've
If
all
you do,
worked
I'm
with
gonna
that
talk
one
about you.
person that we're like, man, I wish they would have taken a shower this morning. Anybody else?
Respectful.
Yeah, respectful. I like that answer. What was that?
Motivated.
Yes, motivated. That's a huge one, especially in this field. There's a lot of self-motivation that has to come because most of the people, from my personal experience, are not going to hold your hand. So as long as you are self-motivated, that's going to get you very far.
This job is all about the autonomy of it, and that's why people get into it. We don't want to sit there under a doctor and ask permission to do everything. Part of that is the responsibility of being motivated to go and get things done. And so that's a big one for me.
One thing that I've learned is you have to take care of yourself in order to take care of others.
Yeah. So taking care of yourself before you take care of others, that's a huge one too. Because if you're not showing up to your full potential and you're providing care to that patient, is that what you would want to your family member? That's the way I look at it. You got to take care of yourself. So anything else?
Calm.
What's that?
Being calm.
Yeah,
Yes,
being
for the
calm.
love of God. It's just freaking, don't be the guy running around like a chicken with your head cut off.
Yeah.
You know, please don't be that person because they called you for help. And so if you're all worked up and running around looking goofy, then what do you think they're going to do?
Yeah.
You know, if you're calm, they're calm.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people are overly calm, and that's all right. CJ, this guy don't get worked up about anything.
Yeah, it's true.
I don't either. I mean,
Yeah.
if you see me worked up, then you probably need to be worked up.
Mhm.
So yeah, stay calm.
Yeah, I'm a
It's all
big
right.
fan of that analogy, like a duck on water. Like on the surface, everything's like doo doo doo, and then underneath the water, the legs are like, "Please help me." Yeah. So that is huge because your anxiety is contagious as the person that shows up on that scene and people are looking to for direction, and you're anxious. That's gonna just resonate with everybody else on that scene.
Yeah, the people from Alston just shouted out empathy and respect.
Yeah.
Again, two big things: respect for your patient, respect for your fellow responders, and have the empathy for these folks. We've got folks that call 911 2-3 times, every couple of days. They want to come see you. They want you to come sit in there and talk to them, and that's fine. It's aggravating. You can cuss them out on the way over there, but when you get there, you need to have some empathy for these folks and be respectful to them. It's all right. I mean, that's what you get paid to do. So
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have input? All right.
Maybe the slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
I like that one.
I love that one. Because once you get all worked up and you're trying to do something like with your fine muscle skills, it just goes out the window. So slow it down, take a step back, take a breath.
It's not your emergency. You don't need to be in a hurry.
So lifting and carrying equipment's another one. We are all kind of expected to be able to carry our own weight. Chaz and I learned that last night, carrying somebody down some stairs. Good eyesight, obviously. You want to be able to see what you're doing. So vision correction if you need it. Communication skills is a big one. Resourceful, cooperative, pleasant, sincere. We touched on some of this stuff. Neat and clean. I think you said that.
Emotionally stable. We're all a little unstable.
Yeah.
I think that should say work on your mental health, right?
Mhm.
Like don't, if you ran a bad call, you're not having a good time with it, tell somebody. If y'all come work for us, I could tell you we got a director that will send you home and respectfully send you home. Not like you suck at this, you need to go home. He's gonna be like, hey, look, if you're not having a good time, take you a couple of days, right? That's cool. It's all right. We all get it. We've been there. We've ran the bad calls. We all did it, right? We sat out there 6 deep on the tarmac about a month and a half ago in tears. I can tell you that firsthand. All right. And I'm not afraid to admit it. All of us. And there's a good chunk of us in this room that were sitting there in tears. Right. So take care of your mental health. And I will harp on that and harp on that throughout the tenure to this class.
Mm-hmm. All right. So education, we talked about those continuing education. I need to double check. I think it's 24 hours for 2 years for EMTs that you need to recert.
Marcus,
So,
how many hours you got to do? 50?
oh, 40.
40?
Oh, is it EMR that's 24 hours?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay. So there's going to be a set. Oh, okay. So there's going to be a set number of hours over a period of 2 years where you have to take CAPC accredited courses. You're going to submit it to the National Registry and they're going to say, cool, you're good to go for another 2 years. So to get those hours, there's a number of online platforms. The National Registry changed this right around COVID that you don't have to be all in class. So you can take these courses online. We'll give you resources before you get out of here. There's going to be conferences held. Elko does a few conferences every year. I know there's like a trauma symposium coming up. They have their other EMS.
Yeah, their rural EMS conference or whatever it's called.
Yeah, Reno does some. They're all over the place. If you want to go to Georgia and do one, they're doing their cardiac conference here in a couple months. I just got an email.
Yeah.
So
So the CEUs do go to your national registry, or
they go to your state and national, but you have to upload them in 2 different places. It's a big money grab, but you'll have to upload them to the state and you have to upload them to the national registry, and you got to pay for both of them.
but you don't have to do it for the national registry.
You don't have to if you don't want to. If you plan on living in Battle Mountain or in this state for your whole life and that's all you ever plan on doing, and you don't plan on doing anything else. But like for us, with our national registry, we were able to move from Georgia out here, and all we had to do was apply for a state license because we already had our national registry. There's some that will make you redo an entire test if you don't have a national registry. So
the state of Nevada does accept national registry renewal when you renew for the state, which does allow you to kind of use A to solve for B. But the state doesn't go the other way, where you can't renew the state, and national registry is going to sign off it too.
Right.
Back in the day, it used to be way easier to get state certified classes as opposed to the CAPC certified courses. And right now, it's actually completely reversed. It's actually easier to find CAPC and national certified courses online for free than it is to find a state.
yeah, because like Foam Frat, Impact Med, there's a bunch of them that do continuing education and CEU stuff that you can find online, sit in front of a computer for a handful of hours and get all your stuff done.
This is bright red. You'll hear me say this a few times throughout the class. It is a scope of practice, not a scope of knowledge. So nobody is going to stop you from coming up and being like, hey, I want to learn more about this. I want to learn more about that. I feel like there's a couple people in this room on the wall over here that have kind of proven that. Like you talk to Calvin, he's going to out neuro me every single day of the week.
Well, Calvin's also the EMT basic that took a critical care paramedic class.
Yeah.
That does absolutely nothing for him other than he got the knowledge out of taking it.
Mhm.
So nothing stops you from learning except for you.
Okay. We already talked about all this stuff. And our EMT beneficial on a resume. It looks good whenever you come out and you're like, hey, I want to go here. I have my national registry. It looks good. So QI, QA stuff, once you start working, this is kind of going to be a bigger thing. So pretty much what it does is somebody is assigned to look over your charting, your document. Huh?
I said, that's us.
Yes.
We're the dicks behind the computer.
Yeah, your charting, your documentation. The big thing on QA, QI, we're not there to get you in trouble. We are there for the betterment of whatever you're doing. So if we see something in a chart that's like, hey, why did you do this, or why did you chart it this way? It's purely so we can all improve as a service. There's nothing about it that's like, hey, I'm better at this than you, that's why I said this. There's nothing about that. It's purely to get better. You guys will see whenever it comes to like the documentation and stuff, there's a lot that goes into this documentation. I put it at like 70-80% of this job, because once you do everything, you got to chart it, and then you got to chart why you did it and make it look good. Because whenever
you did it, why you did it, why you didn't do it. And I could tell you firsthand, if you want to lose your license or a lot of money out of your pocket, write a crappy chart on a bad call and let that family come back and sue your ambulance service, and they pull that chart. You're going to lose a lot of money, and there's a chance that you lose your license, and there's a chance you go to jail. So take documentation just as serious as you take this class, because it will cost you a lot in the long run if you don't.
Yeah, because isn't it that law that even if you do a crappy chart, that law, I forgot what it's called, won't protect you against that?
Well, it doesn't. So we're in a weird dynamic in EMS right now. So there's the Good Samaritan law. Yeah. So we don't technically fall under the Good Samaritan law because we are trained medical professionals. And so if you run a 911 call on somebody and you walk up right now, tomorrow, and you see somebody wreck in front of Etcheberry's down here and you stop, you're covered under the Good Samaritan law because you're stopping to help this person, right? Once you become a paid paramedic or an EMT, you're not a Good Samaritan no more. You're a paid professional. And so at that point, if you're in an ambulance and you pull up on that same wreck and you walk over there and kick that guy in the kneecap, well, now you're no longer a good Samaritan. You're a paid paramedic or an EMT, and you're about to get the crap suit out of you. So yeah, the documentation aspect of it just falls back into the whole, like, once you're done with the call, you have to really show what happened on the call, why you did it, why you didn't do it. Because if a lawyer looks at it, and says, well, you documented this, what happened? And you go, well, I didn't do that. And they'd be like, well, it's right here on a piece of paper. Like, you said you did it. Like, that's cool. We'll take all your money now. And they will.
So after our QA QI, we have our medical direction. So our protocols are signed off by a doctor. That is technically who oversees us, right? So we don't have to call them for every little thing we do. We don't have to be like, hey, I want to start an IV on this person. Can I do that? That's all in our written protocols. The thing that comes outside of written protocols, if you're trying to deviate from these protocols, that's where medical direction also comes in. You can contact them. They are a good resource for a lot of questions that you may have when it comes to protocols, patient care, generally speaking. A lot of times they oversee training. Sometimes you'll get into these services and their medical director is very on top of, like, hey, I see that some people are struggling with this. Let's go over it. Let's train on it. Let me teach you how to do this. So it can be a really good resource, especially if you're kind of in a situation where you're like, I don't really know what to do here. Let me call my medical direction and get some orders or talk to them about it. They're most of the time a very good resource.
Who would you guys call on that?
It would be Battle Mountain General Hospital.
Oh, okay.
So we just call the doctor that's over there, and it's dependent. So like whenever we worked in Atlanta, we would call our main hospital. There's 5 hospitals in Metro Atlanta, but we would call our main hospital usually. So there's usually a doctor on call that's like, hey, I'll talk to you, as long as they're under the same.
So everybody has a medical director. So like our medical director is Dr. Herman, and he oversees all of our protocols and our medicine and all that stuff. He is our like direct medical supervisor. But then like on a day-to-day basis, if Dr. Hansen or Dr. Pellegrini or whoever's in the ER and we have questions, we just call the ER, and whoever that doctor is will be able to answer those questions. So
There's a scenario, I think it was chapter 4, like 1, it was talking about what would you do if you think that your patient wasn't going to make it to the hospital. It was an organ donor, but it also had a DNR.
yeah, so organ donation is a weird thing. So when you're in a town like this, I'm going to say this as humanely as possible. Organ donation kind of goes out the window, right? Because we don't have the capabilities to be able to surgically remove those organs. And so here, that's just kind of out the window. Whether you're an organ donor or not, all you're doing is saving money on your license every so often. If you're somewhere else, if they're an organ donor with a DNR, I don't. That's a weird gray line, because you're not supposed to do anything, but
It says that even though it's a organ donor, you're supposed to treat it as a non-organ.
yeah, because if they have a medical direction that has a DNR is a signed medical document from a doctor that has to be updated every so often and renewed. And so if they have that kind of supersedes pretty much everything else as far as like what you can do for that person. Once they say, don't touch me no more, then you just can't touch them.
Yeah. All right, so EMS role in public health, we touched on this a little bit. There's lots of things you can do with an EMT license, vaccination administration. You can do car seat checkups for your public, just generalized like public training. Like you can go out, you can teach CPR, you can do like lift or fall risk stuff with elderly patients, those kinds of things. So, research for EMS has always been a little bit difficult. What time?
6:16.
Does anybody need to take a break?
You just want to power out through this PowerPoint?
Yeah, it should be almost done. So the research for EMS has always been a little bit difficult because we kind of fall under that weird like transportation safety. They do a lot of studies in the ER that they reflect back onto EMS, but a lot of times that doesn't fully reflect back to us because we are the first on scene. So that's where it kind of comes. They're getting better about it, but it's still hard to see like the EMS research side of things because every what is the word I'm looking for?
Every one of these research sheets that they do and these big, data dumps that they do, they include EMS in them, but a lot of them are like in the cities. A lot of them don't really include like the rural EMS setting. And a lot of them just mainly focus on the hospital and like their interventions, and they just kind of toss us in there as like the redheaded stepchildren.
And it's hard to
like,
have
"Oh,
like
they're
a
here."
controlled environment to do research on an ambulance whenever we don't get the same call twice, right? So it can be difficult. And that was it. Well, that was easy to power through. You guys can go ahead and take a break. We'll do 5 minutes and then we'll just power through the other PowerPoints.
This conference will now be recorded.
You can look right into it.
It's too much. I can't remove it. Very bottom.
All right. Thank you, Matt. We have this set up so I can hopefully see your guys' chat now.
You good?
Yeah.
Good to keep going. You want me to do this one?
You don't have no voice.
That's all right. I can work through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, did you need me to sign a form for you? Is that what you're feeling?
Oh, dude, you want to sign my dude? Don't want to sign his or what? Oh, you're all right, dude. Sure. Yeah, he's just.
I don't know what the code is.
I feel bad that Calvin's sitting on the floor over there.
It's in the chair.
Probably just maybe.
Kind of off college. And then every fall, Larry's
Good?
He just said, "Well, you feel fair."
All right.
Okay.
So with the homework assignments, if you have not realized it yet, I just want to touch on this so that you know the homework assignments from here forward should open up a week before they're due, or I guess technically 6 days before they're due, right? So like chapter 5 is due this Thursday or Wednesday at midnight, Wednesday at 9 o'clock, whatever, until I can figure that out. And so it should have opened up last Thursday. So Tuesday, there should be more assignments that should be starting to pop up on your thing for all the stuff that we're going over next Tuesday, and so forth and so on. So everything that you have, you should have a week to complete. All right. So don't wait till the last minute.
Okay, my question is, it shows me reading, and then I have a pretest.
Yep. And that's all you should have.
Pretest is our only homework.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay,
So
I just wanna make sure.
yeah, and like I said, we're not trying to inundate y'all with a bunch of nonsense, right? Because you're going to get a bunch of the same questions, a bunch of the same nonsense. We're going to kind of hit y'all with these pre-tests and the reading, and it's going to be a fight or flight type of thing, right? Like we're going to teach y'all everything that we can try to help y'all through, but a lot of it's going to be, you got to help yourself, right? You got to help us help you, right? And so make sure you're doing studying at home. And by all means, if you're halfway through studying and you're just like, I'm not freaking getting this, call one of us, right? Like I know sometimes if you text me, it might take me a few hours to get back because I like to take naps, and that's cool. But when I text you, anybody that has tried to meet me at the station has directed me with some help. I've tried to meet them in some capacity. So if you need me, or her, just shoot one of us a text. Like I said, we're trying to keep Mike and CJ kind of hands off as much as we can, just because they have enough bull crap to deal with. So reach out to one of us first, and if you can't get us, then kind of go another avenue. But yeah, so we're available.
So how does this work? So chapter 1 through 4, we're gonna work Monday, Tuesday, and Saturday of this week.
No, so chapter 1 through 4 is all going to be done tonight.
Tonight.
Yeah, chapter 5 is going to be done on Thursday, and then Saturday is going to be CPR. Right? CJ's all set up for that. So Saturday should be CPR class. If you have a CPR if you're CPR certified and your CPR certification lapses sometime this year, come to the class. Just go ahead and get it done. That way you don't have to pay for anything super crazy to go some class somewhere else. You just have to, get through the class. If you have a CPR certification that you just did 2 months ago, then I'm not really overly concerned with it. You don't have to show up.
Really? What time is that?
Well, no, they do.
Well,
built into their class.
Yeah, you still have to show up, but you just don't have to be. You have to be here, but yeah. So the everything else should be pretty standard as far as like what's on the syllabus and what's on the schedule. So yeah, if you just look at that, 1 through 4 is today, 5 Thursday, CPR, and I think CPR is the only big class we have on Saturdays. Everything else is going to be pretty much skills and just kind of review stuff.
That's
So
right. It's on syllabus, huh?
yeah.
Yeah, there is. If anyone doesn't have the schedule, come talk to me. I'll get you a copy of it. You should have got it on the first day, but if there was anything, just let me know. It should be the one with all the red on it.
Yeah, I don't know why that's built into the
that's our
schedule.
schedule. All right, so we're gonna kind of go through these. We got about an hour left. I got 3 more PowerPoints. So well-being of the EMT. Hopefully we can see this one a little bit better. I didn't realize that I need to make the fonts bigger. So if anyone's struggling, just let me know. All right, so our objectives for this chapter, we're gonna define standard precautions, give examples of a standard precaution. Everyone throws their hands up and says BSI, because that's gonna be drilled into your head by the end of this. Organisms that can cause infection, diseases of concern, and we're gonna identify who regulates the safety of you guys. So keep yourself prepared. If you're unable to function for any reason, patients may not get needed care. So that's a big thing, right? So we talked about the safety of us directly correlates with how we are treating our patient. So maintaining solid personal relationships, exercise, sleep, eating well, limiting alcohol and caffeine intake. Some of us drink a lot of coffee every single day, but just be mindful, same kind of thing. These aren't the best things for your body.
Isn't it 8 hours?
It stays in your body for 8 hours, caffeine. Yeah. Yeah, the half-life of caffeine is like 8 hours. So if you drink it, it doesn't technically stop you from feeling tired. It stops your little receptors from making you feel sleepy. I don't know. Calvin would know. All right. What is a standard precaution? So whenever you hear this word, whenever they talk about it, it's talking about how you're protecting yourself. So there's lots of different ways. The most common, obviously, is gloves. Yep, everyone puts on gloves before they get on a call, most everyone. We have our masks. We have our N95 masks. This guy's got all the stuff on to suction the puke out of this guy's mouth. So whenever they're talking about PPE, BSI, body substance isolation is what that stands for, and PPE is personal protective equipment. Standard precaution, that all kind of falls into the same general area. Most of the time, my rule, if it's wet, sticky, and not yours, put something on before touching it. So gloves, face protection, mask, gowns. Gowns, I put a little note at the bottom here. They are your best friend if you deliver a baby, because it can be quite wet, sticky, and not yours.
And if you're riding with a paramedic, you will deliver a baby because that's in your scope.
Delivering a baby is a BLS skill.
Yeah.
Another note that's in here, well, they'll touch on tuberculosis later, but if you are suspecting a tuberculosis case, wear an N95 with a HEPA filter. Tuberculosis kind of unheard of, but then they had a big breakout in Kansas like a week
just
ago.
recently, like 70 something people got TB.
Yeah, so just be mindful of that kind of stuff. You're going to see tuberculosis mostly in like big communities of like college dorms, homeless shelters, those kinds of things, nursing homes. So just be mindful if you get a patient that has all the signs and symptoms. Biohazard stuff, our CDC, our OSHA, and then I'm sure you guys are familiar with MSHA if you're on the mines out here. Kind of the same umbrella of stuff. They're all developing guidelines to keep you safe. So there's policies, procedures set in place. So you guys have limited interaction with the stuff that can make you sick, basically. Our local protocols, you'll be able to find in our protocol book. We talk about PPE, what you should be wearing, where you should dispose of needles. Don't just leave them laying out everywhere because needle sticks are not fun. Getting blood splashed in your eyes is not fun. Allegedly. Yeah, it sucks. They put you on medicine that makes you perpetually sick for the next 6 months. I just heard. All right. Pathogens are the organisms that cause infection, and they could be bloodborne or they could be airborne. What does that mean if they're bloodborne? Okay, and airborne? Perfect. So how do we prevent against a bloodborne pathogen? Gloves, yeah. Don't go licking on freaking somebody's blood. That's gross. And then airborne, how do we protect against that? I feel like everybody's familiar with that now because like COVID was a thing. So
Is it for TB? I was reading, they're supposed to, like, if you're riding in an ambulance, you're supposed to put your air on uncirculated air and like roll down the window.
Yeah, there's a recirculation system that we have, an exhaust vent. You can turn on that exhaust vent that draws everything back out of the cab or back out of the back of the truck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you're lucky, you have windows that open up in the back.
Yeah. And that fan's super loud, so you're like, I'm just gonna shut this off so I can hear. All right, so some diseases of concern. We have hepatitis B and C. It affects your liver. So it can live on surfaces and dried blood for several days. Some signs and symptoms you might see is the yellowing of the skin. We got what's called what? Does anybody know? Jaundice, yes. You can see it in the eyes. So hepatitis B is deadly, and there is now a vaccine for it. And then hepatitis C, there is no vaccine for it. So just try to avoid like stabbing your patient with a needle and then stabbing yourself, those kinds of things. Tuberculosis, does everybody know who this is? Thank you. Thank you.
Does anybody not know who it is?
Yeah, does anyone not know who he is?
Fired. Get out.
Get out. Just kidding. So tuberculosis, it's a disease of the lungs. It is airborne. It is highly contagious. Whenever we go into later chapters, we go more into the signs and symptoms of it. If you are going on a patient with known TB, you need to take the precautions. I've actually been exposed to this before. It was weird. I had like a patient months later, almost a year later, they called me and they're like, hey, that patient had TB. I just had to go in for like a little skin test. It was fine. Usually, as long as it's not active, you're good. But if it is active, make sure you're taking those precautions. We have AIDS. So starts out HIV. It attacks the immune system. There's certain signs and symptoms that you'll see associated with that, which we'll get into more detail later. And if you have contact with these patients, again, bloodborne, try not to go licking on their blood or like open cuts or anything on your hand. Be mindful of.
But don't be scared. The AIDS ain't gonna jump out and touch you. Like,
Yeah,
it's
it's
fine.
not.
You know, it's just don't lick it and it's fine.
Yeah. Ebola, hemorrhagic fever, SARS is spread through respiratory droplets. Avian flu. We are all very familiar, I'm sure, with the new H5N1 craze that's going around. California put themselves in a state of emergency. So be mindful. They have a flu vaccine, can help with the symptoms, supposedly might make you just as sick as if you had the flu. All right, so after you've been exposed, what do you do? So does anybody have, what would you do if you got exposed? Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so talk to your supervisor. We have this Ryan White Care Act. So if you notify your employer of an exposure, they are going to tell you where to go. You're going to get the right blood work, get the right resources for that. So like for me, I got splashed in the eyes with ball blood, and I'm not even joking. It was ball blood. Because my lovely partner over here decided to cut baby Gap underwear that were spandex off of a dead guy. Yeah. And it was like one of those, my vision went blurry and I had to blink like 4 times to get it clear up. So first thing I did, notified my supervisor. It's true. Second thing I did, I notified my supervisor, went to the hospital. They went down their route, got put on certain medications. So as long as you're letting the right people know, you're going to get directed to the right place. So OSHA standard for bloodborne pathogens require infection control to the joint responsibility of employer and employee. So whenever you work somewhere, they are going to provide the appropriate PPE and standard precautions that you're going to need. A lot of places that you work, they're going to require vaccination records. And then a lot of times they also check your titers for levels of vaccinations. So like you can go in and they say, hey, you had your chickenpox vaccine, still not showing up in your system, get another shot, kind of thing. Immunizations. So this is so small. I wish I would have known this was going to be so small. This is TB tests. They put a little thing under your skin. If it gets inflamed, you got to go in for a chest x-ray, those kinds of things. Yeah. All right, so scene safety. We touched on this our last PowerPoint. It's very much harped on in EMS. So BSI, scene safety, if the scene is not safe for you, and this doesn't just start at the beginning of the call, right? So if you're in the middle of a call and somebody pulls out a butcher knife and starts chasing you, obviously your scene's no longer safe. So this is something that we're going to talk about. You're going to continuously reevaluate throughout the call. And you should have your little spidey senses tingling at some point, right? So just be mindful. Hazmat situations can be dangerous if you're not properly trained. My EMS instructors always joke that we do the canary test. So we send other people in first, and then if they drop down, then we kind of stay away.
Tell them who the canaries are.
Yeah, it's usually them. So yeah, we have these little books in the trucks. We have an app on our phone. It's that book, but just an app. So whenever we deal with a hazmat situation, there's placards that are posted on like semis, what have you, and it'll tell you what's going on with whatever chemical they're carrying. Also, once you get into like these big industrial areas, they have like packets of stuff. I'm sure you guys have seen, if you're dealt with the mine, they have packets of stuff. So if somebody gets exposed to that, you have something to refer back to. Yeah, there's some name for it. SDS sheet. I don't know. I always just ask, where's your sheet? Or call poison control. All right. So violence. I like doing this, especially in kind of sketchy places. Stand to the side of the door and knock. I personally have never dealt with it. I've heard horror stories of somebody shooting through a door. Just because your EMS doesn't protect you entirely all the time. So,
we live in a world where a lot of people are growing to dislike the police department, and a lot of us walk around with these nice clothes on, and we don't look too terribly
Not like a deadbolt on their door.
Is it?
All, like, locked
Is
in
it back
and
on?
locked in.
Hey,
So, like, that deadbolt
Becca,
box door from closing all the way just so I can get out.
turn your mic back on.
Is it on?
Yeah, they just, I guess they time out.
Oh, they do. Hello, am I back? Okay. All right. So yeah, never always have an escape plan. Like I said, sometimes the most unsuspecting patients will actually like kick your butt, and it sucks. So just be on the lookout.
And it's normally like the 110-pound crackheads. They will beat the crap out of you.
Yeah, they're
every
like
time.
this big around. You're like, wow, I just got my butt kicked. Wear safe clothing. Make sure your clothing is not like your pants aren't too long, that kind of stuff. Have a portable radio. That's one thing Mike always tells us is if you don't have your radio on you and something happens, what are you gonna like pull out your phone and call 911? Like sometimes you don't have the time to do that. So portable radios.
And we have had that instance. When we were in Atlanta, we had a crew that was getting their butt kicked by a patient in the back of the ambulance. And the crew member that was driving got out of the truck, left a radio, didn't call for help, jumped in the back of the truck. Now they're both getting their butts kicked, and she's trying to call.
Disturbing a lot of things. Obviously, we still have to do our job.
Hello.
But don't go in and be like, hey, I found this crap.
Yeah.
Alcohol, drug use, sometimes that can make somebody violent. So just be mindful of these things. I'm not saying it happens all the time, but just be mindful. Do I need to stand closer to this?
No, it's only coming from right there now.
Okay. All right. Let me know if you lose me again and I'll start talking into this thing. All right. Family members, like I said, you never know how somebody's going to react under positions of stress. So you might have somebody that's quite pleasant when you get there. They're talking to you like normal, and then something stressful happens. They're worried about their family member, and now you're in danger. So just keep that in mind. It kind of comes down to the respect thing too. If you walk in being snarky to family members, they might not treat you with respect as well. So we have the 3 R's of danger. So respond. But in Grady, they had little cameras that recorded us. So if we ran a stop sign or anything, our supervisor would get. And he's like, I didn't want to mess up my driving sport.
It sounds like
Hello, buddy. I feel like I'm
we
standing on
actually had that incident here happen probably a year ago where we were toned out to a brush fire. Got there, turns out the guy actually set the thing on fire to bring everybody in. And then in the midst of all the chaos, drew his pistol, hid, and then put a 45 to his head. We were probably 45 feet away from him when he did that. So scenes are dynamic, they change in an instant.
Absolutely.
If you see me running, you better run. That's all I can tell you. 'Cause I don't run for nothing.
Yeah. Then we have our lovely police officers here that make sure our scenes are safe. If there is most of the time, I'm gonna say all the time, because this is a class, if you're toned out to like a GSW or something, you should be waiting till the scene is secure before you go in there. Because of that situation, you never really know what's going on. So, yeah, I like how they're hiding in a bush. I just like this picture. So concealing yourself, place your body behind an object. I will say these monitors that we carry are very, very expensive, right? So if you walk in somewhere and somebody starts shooting at you, don't worry about the monitors. Leave it, because as you're carrying it out, you're like, oh no, no. It don't matter. Leave your equipment, unless it's your radio, of course. And that's it. Any questions? What questions do you have? I know it was like 20 minutes ago our last break. Does anyone else need a break?
What was the other term? So on that last slide,
Reevaluate.
yeah, the reevaluate one. You put yourself between like the danger and then something above the wall, and it's supposed to protect you.
Yeah, like
and
the
then,
ceiling.
Yeah, and then the other one was reevaluate, where even though you hide, you're not 100%.
Yeah, you're gonna leave the scene, and then in theory, you're gonna wait. You're not gonna just walk back and be like, oh, that person's on. I'm gonna go walk back and just kind of wait until this scene is secured by police. Which out here, we're really lucky because PD does respond to all of our calls, but it is not like that anywhere else. That is like a rare thing. So. Okay, lifting and moving patients, the fun stuff. So we're going to learn proper use of your body to prevent injury and facilitate lifting and moving and protecting your patient with emergency, urgent, and non-urgent moves. So in this job, we're going to lift patients. It's just something that happens. So being prepared in those situations, having different techniques on how you're going to get a patient out of certain situations, it's going to be important because it's going to save your back in the long run. So body mechanics, I'm sure you guys have probably all been to any high school class, like gym class, they teach you this stuff. You really just want to work with your back and twist, right? Yeah. No, don't do that, please. So you want to make sure your feet are shoulder width apart. You're going to put your center of your gravity over the whatever you're lifting, and then you're going to bend your knees and use your legs, right? So you don't want to do any major twisting while you're lifting. We do have certain tools that we use on the ambulance to help us get patients out. We have mega movers, we have mini movers.
Mini movers.
Like for babies?
Yeah.
No.
No.
It was a mishap in the ordering process that ended up with what's supposed to be a mega mover being real small. It's not built for chunky folks.
No,
We learned that last night.
Yeah. We got straps we can use. We have stair chairs, scoop stretchers. There's a plethora.
Yeah. That's mine. Mike has buttons.
All right. So things to consider: the object. Obviously, if it's like a perfect little box, it's gonna be a little bit easier to pick up than if it's like a human because there's weird things. It's not symmetrical. Your limitations. So do not be the person that's like, oh yeah, I can totally lift this, and you know you can't, and then do it anyway. Because a lot of times in those situations, it's not just you that's affected; it's you and your partner. And you'll see some places if you go out and expand your EMT skills. Not everywhere has auto load stretchers, so lifting those stretchers and putting them into the ambulance, we're really lucky out here because we have auto loads. We don't have to do a lot of that heavy lifting. But if you and your partner are relying on each other to lift this patient in, and you really can't lift that patient, and you end up dropping that patient, you're going to get you hurt, you're going to get your partner hurt, you're going to get the patient hurt. That's where communication comes in. The famous term of communication is key. I like to say comprehension is key because I can communicate all day long, but unless somebody comprehends what I'm trying to communicate, nothing's going to get done effectively. There it is. Yeah. Some things they want to talk about in the book is pushing rather than pulling. So on the stretchers, if you're in the back, and we'll go over stretcher etiquette on Saturday. If you're in the back of the stretcher and you're pushing, that's your job is to push. Whoever's in the front of the stretcher is there to turn the stretcher. Unless it's like a super, super heavy patient and they have to pull some, they shouldn't be pulling behind them. There's a lot of shoulder injuries that happen that way, especially after like years and years and years of doing this. You want to try and avoid that. Avoid pushing or pulling overhead. Yep. All right. Emergency moves you. So, whenever you guys think emergency move, what do you think?
That the scene is not safe anymore.
Okay, seems not safe. What did you say? I'm sorry.
We gotta get him out of there as soon as possible.
Yeah, they need to be moved quickly. All right. So the scene's hazardous, life-threatening.
You're thinking about like, you pull up and you got a car on fire after it just got into an accident, right? Like you're not gonna take the time to sit over there and be like, okay, somebody holding spinal precautions, somebody making sure that broken arm is secure. You're gonna grab them, you're gonna snatch them, you're gonna pull them out of the car.
Yeah.
Life over limb at that point.
And you're going to hear that a lot, life over limb. So, you're going to learn the spinal precautions, but sometimes if somebody really is in a bad way, you're just going to have to move them. So,
What the frick is he doing?
he's dragging him.
All right.
Incline drag, always drag head first.
Shit, I can't see.
I know, it's so small. You can utilize the patient's clothing. If they have bed sheets around, there's nothing stopping you from grabbing one of their bed sheets and using it. Use your resources, use your tools. This one's my personal favorite. I could just.
If I ever see you do this on scene, I'm gonna judge you really hard.
Yeah, so you're supposed to tie your patient's hands together, put it around your neck, and then kind of crawl.
It makes sense that it's called firefighter's drag.
Stop it. Blanket drag. Use this quite a few times. 2 rescuer assist, 1 rescuer assist. So we've all seen this, maybe done this. Somebody hurt themselves, you're kind of assisting them. My personal favorite is when you're like assisting them and they just go limp, and I'm like, cool, that's awesome for my back, thank you. All right, here it is again, life over limb. We're gonna harp on this quite a bit. So we have our stretchers. Our backboards, I'm sorry. We have our scoop stretchers. So the thing about the scoop stretcher here, the one with the, I wish I could like point to it with a mouse or something for those down in Austin. The one with the little black stuff on it, that's a scoop stretcher. It actually comes apart and you can scoop it up under the patient and click it back together. Really helpful for like Meemaw that fell and broke her hip because you're not moving them around and wrestling them onto like a blanket or anything. Yep.
The backboard we don't use unless we're moving the back.
Yeah.
And then you take them back off of it. It's terrible.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the backboard stuff later. It has been drilled into everybody's head to use a backboard. Even when I started EMS, they were like standing takedowns, backboards save lives, and then now they're like, actually, they're not that great. They cause a lot of problems, but that's another soapbox. Yeah. All right, so non-urgent moves, this is where there's no immediate life threat. You can kind of take your time a little bit, get them situated, using the proper equipment, getting them out of wherever they are. You can take the precautions not to aggravate existing conditions. So a perfect example of that would be like grandma fell and broke her hip, right? And we're not running into grandma's house and grabbing her and like dragging her outside. That's going to cause her more pain than is necessary. So that's where we can utilize like our scoop stretcher or waiting for someone else to come on scene to help us limit her movement to kind of help her feel better, or him. These are different types of ambulances. This one is a bariatric ambulance. So they have like a ramp and a winch. And so their little stretcher hooks into that winch and it'll actually pull that patient up. This is our stair chair. You will learn to hate this or love it. Some people love it, some people hate it. It can be useful in the correct situation. There is extra credit points to anybody who pulls it up on the first time.
Or holds it out on the first time.
Yes.
If you can make this thing not make you look dumb, then I'll buy you a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
If it makes me look dumb every time.
Yeah. Guaranteed pinch fingers, guaranteed to make you look stupid. The rules usually on these, a lot of the devices that we use are like Stryker brand. If it's red, if whatever handle is red, straps red, it's going to make it move somehow. So like you'll see like a red little wire thing that you pull up on the scoop stretcher. I mean the stair chair. On our stretchers, there's like a red thing at the foot that'll bring their foot up. So if it's red, it's gonna make it move somehow.
There's like a red like strap right here around the middle, around the butt that you can like pull and lift up. And there's if it's red, it moves.
This is
the stair chair.
What? Yeah. Yeah, if you can, absolutely, by all means, if you can try to unfold and fold that thing without looking like a ding ding, I will buy you a cup of coffee.
We're doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Practice it.
Yeah. It'll be like a time thing. You gotta pull it out, put it back in.
But you don't know when I'm going to test you on it. You might train on it next week, and it might be freaking a month before I train you on it.
Let's do that every training.
This is our little mega mover sheet. Obviously, they don't all look like this, but kind of generalized. They got handles on them, give you more points of access to help lift that patient up. These are awesome for like those unconscious people, the people on the second story that can't walk, those kinds of things.
Do you guys have the ones for you can sit them down?
Yeah, so I already talking about like the KEDs.
No, they make mega movers for
little seat.
Oh yeah. I've never actually used one, but I did accidentally grab one instead of this the other day. Short spine boards. These are really useful for like seated patients. You can use them as pediatric spinal boards too. A stretcher. This is an Inferno. So there's different brands of stretchers that you might see. We use Stryker. I like Stryker. I've always used Stryker though, so I can't really have a lot of input. They all have little different ways that they move and lift and stuff. This one with the X feet, you can, I don't know, it's like they fold into themselves.
Like you pull it out, like one leg drops, and then the other leg drops. And then, I don't know. There's a bunch of different stretchers out there, but most places seem to like kind of gravitate towards Stryker products when it comes to like the stretchers and the stair chairs and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, and we'll go over, like I said, we'll go over stretcher etiquette on Saturday, because there's like you can put the stretcher into a loading position, which brings it super high, which for me as a shorter person kind of sucks because I can't see if I'm like looking around. It also brings that center of gravity up, so it's easier to tip over if it's super high up. So we'll talk about all that stuff, and you guys can put your hands on the stretcher and like actually bring it up and down because those buttons can be a little bit confusing. I still do it, like hit the wrong button or something. And then this is a Stokes basket. So we don't really see a lot of these unless you're doing like technical rescue stuff. All right, so they're still going to teach you if somebody has a suspected spinal injury, we want to try to limit the movement of their head, neck, and spine as much as possible. So keep in mind, if somebody is alert talking to you and they roll their vehicle and they run up to you, they're going to self-splint, right? If you're hurt, like if you break your arm, you're going to self-splint, you're going to hold it to yourself, or you're going to limit that movement. If you have a suspected spinal injury where if they're like unconscious or they are having neural problems because of like a neck pain, you want to try and keep their head, neck, and spine in line. So we don't want to be like moving them around and jostling them. Whenever you move them, we'll go over techniques on how to like soothe the patient if you have a suspected spinal injury. There's a couple ways to handle it. We have manual stabilization. So that just means like you're holding their head in place where it needs to go or where it needs to stay. And then we have cervical collar. There's different types of cervical collars. We have a soft and we have a hard. The soft is a lot more comfortable on the patients. And I feel like they fit more people than the hard collars. We'll go over that stuff. But basically you're just restricting the spine. This is a kind of a way to refer back to if you think that patient needs to have spinal motion restriction or not. So if they're intoxicated, painful, or distracting injury, because if my wrist bone is sticking out of my hand and I'm distracted by this, I'm not going to focus so much on my back if it is hurt, right? If I'm going to self-splint. Midline posterior spinal tenderness, so that's just talking about like actually palpating or feeling their spine. If you're like feeling their bones and they're like, yeah, that really, really hurts. We'll go into more detail of this. I just want you guys to kind of lay eyes on it so we can start getting in your brain a little bit. So I just would have loved to be there while they took these pictures because I think some of them are hilarious. So if they don't have a suspected spinal injury, we have extremity lifts. If you want to carry your patient like that with your partner, I have never done that personally. Direct ground lifts. This is where those like mega movers really come in handy because it gives you something to grab onto to lift that patient. This is one you're going to become very familiar with, the draw sheet method. This one on the bottom right. This is what we use to get patients over to the hospital bed the majority of the time. All right, so whenever we talk about patient positioning, this is helpful with your charting to know these words and how they're laying. So supine and prone. The best way I can remember prone is on the nose. I don't know why that sticks so well in my head, but that's how it works for me. Supine, they're going to be flat on their back. We have Fowler's and Trendelenburg. They used to harp on putting everybody in Trendelenburg position if they were in shock. That's not so much a thing anymore, but if you do hear that word, Trendelenburg, that's the position it means. So they want you to put their feet up higher than their head. And then Fowler's, you have semi-Fowler's, which is like their head's just back a little bit more, but they're still sitting up. This is the most common, obviously. If you're sitting on a gurney, that's going to be probably most comfortable for you unless you want to lay flat. You have right lateral recumbent and left lateral recumbent. This is where we talk about like gravity clearing. Here, that scared me. So like if you're trying to do like rescue stuff, if you're trying to get like vomit out of someone's mouth, you'll put them into like a left or right lateral recumbent. Whenever you talk about like really, really pregnant patients, you can't lay them flat on their back. They'll get like low blood pressure. They'll have difficulty breathing. You'll put them in a recumbent position. So yeah, this is semi-Fowler's. So it's just like Fowler's, but the head's back a little bit more. Recovery. All right, patient positioning for shock. So you may have heard the Trendelenburg thing. Whenever we have a suspected patient in shock, the preferred now is to just put them in supine. So if you think about like your body's working to bring blood up, if you bring their head up, their body's going to work hard to bring that blood up here. So whenever you're trying to level out their blood pressure, for the majority of shock patients, you just want to lay them down supine. So the reason they don't want you to raise the legs is because it's putting pressure up on that diaphragm, and technically it can cause more difficulty. So, yeah, that's it. Any questions on lifting and moving patients? And we'll go into like more detail about like the specific things. This is kind of just like a generalized, kind of get you familiar with some of the subject. You guys need to take a break? If you guys want to take a 5-minute break, go ahead. Does Austin have any questions? My little chat phone is gone.
Chat phone's gone.
Larry isn't old. It just says ask Larry. Yeah. I could have been horrible. Like Larry's just like, yeah, we'll figure it out. I'm like, it's like a plan, dude. Yeah, Larry was the hard. He wants like, well, it's essentially where he's like, once I get all those figures.
This conference will now be recorded.
All right, so chapter 4, this is the super fun one that everybody loves, and always ask me to redo again.
This is something that we have to take like super serious because this will absolutely not only cost you money, your career, but it can put you in prison. So be mindful of this stuff.
I'll talk about medical, legal, and ethical issues. Our objectives are going to be differentiating between the scope of practice and standard of care. We're going to review the legalities in regards to pre-hospital care, understand patient rights, and covering all bases with refusals, and define morals and ethics and how they affect EMS. So one big thing that is kind of also my soapbox that I like to get on is the refusal documentation. Most statistically speaking, if you're going to get sued or in trouble, a lot of times it's going to be over the refusals. So those are things that we really need to cover our butts with, make sure that our patients are well informed of their risks. So we have our scope of practice. I do have a link to the website for our EMT model of the scope of practice for EMT basics. It's dependent on the state or wherever you work, but there is a generalized rule of like, this is your scope of practice. What we're going to teach you in this class. There could be a situation where you go somewhere else and they're like, hey, we have this training and this certificate, so you can do more than just your EMT license lets you. But this is just a good starting point. So if you're ever in a situation where you're like, I don't really know if this is like something I can take or I can handle, you can refer back to it. I do have a printout of it. I can send like an email to y'all just so you have access to it. Yeah, if you go on NREMT state website, it's on there both too. The NREMT one is kind of hard to find, but the state one's pretty easy. If you just Google like scope of practice EMT basic Nevada, it comes right up. You can't really see it, but there is. It looks like a Excel sheet, and there's like little X's by what you can do. So this is including your skills and medical interventions. So like as an EMT basic, you don't want to go walking and drilling into people's bones if you've never been trained to do that. So our standard of care, where this comes in is like if you have a situation where a chart that you wrote or a call that you ran gets pulled up and they do take it to court, what they're talking about is like they're going to treat it and ask questions based on how any other EMT in that situation with the same level of training that you have is going to react to that same situation. So, like if I was to run a call and I have a specific skill set because of my training and I didn't do something on this call and they pull in another paramedic that's highly trained or as trained as I am and they said, yeah, they should have done this and this and this according to this scope of practice, they're going to use that against me. So that's why it's important to know what your skills entail and what you can do or can't do and be able to do them well. So we have two kinds of patient consent. So every time we treat a patient, you need to get their consent. There is expressed consent, so that is being informed. So like if I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to put a 12 lead on you so I can look at your heart, that is just me. It's like informing them why I'm like doing the 12 lead. Because if I just walk up to a lady or anybody and pull up their shirt and start throwing stickers on, like I would freak out if someone just started doing that to me if I didn't know what was going on, right? So it's good to inform your patient why you're doing something or why you're not doing something. Sometimes they'll also have questions like, well, why don't you do this and why don't you do that? And you have a reason for not doing it. So then there's something called implied consent. This is assumed. This comes in whenever a patient is unconscious, unresponsive. And then you also have like your minors. They kind of fall under this too. So if mom's not on scene or dad's not on scene or whoever the guardian is, and they are having an emergency, you have a right to treat them as they're a minor. So possible exceptions of this, minors serving in armed forces, minors who have children, and then obviously that life-threatening illness or injury if someone's, you're at a swimming pool and someone goes down and you do CPR on them and bring them back and they wake up and try to sue you because you started to do CPR on them and they didn't want it. They had implied consent at that point for you to treat them. And this could be different wherever you work. I haven't noticed a lot of differences from the 3 states that I've worked in. But.
The only weird thing is, so with the minors who have children, if you run into like a 14, 15-year-old kid who has a child, that person now has the say so over what happens with them and their child and their direct pregnancies. So I ran into that when I was still in Georgia. They still need a guardian for any direct care with them as long as it doesn't concern the child. But if they're pregnant and they say, well, my stomach hurts and I want to go to the hospital, and their mom says, no, they're not going, well, at that point, that is a concern for them and their child, and they are allowed to make their own decision. So be mindful of that. It's kind of a weird thing to run into, but you might run into it.
So minors are not legally permitted to make their own medical choices unless it is a situation like that. So you have, 15-year-old that don't want to go, but mom's like, they have to go. At that point, technically, you need to take them. Obtaining consent from parent or legal guardian. If this in loco parentis, that is the law for like teachers, any kind of athletic directors. If some kid's out on a school field trip or some kind of sporting event and their parents aren't there, that guardian takes ownership for that kid. So if like you run to a volleyball tournament, someone has a broken nose, just because their parents aren't there doesn't mean you're not going to take them. If their teacher's like, yeah, they need to go. Of course, you can always contact the parents at that point, but if there's a situation where you can't, they have a say so over that child.
On the flip side, they can also refuse. So, if you run into an incident where a kid rolls his ankle at a basketball game and the coach is like, no, I think he looks fine, as long as you go through all your refusal processes, he has the power to say, no, we're just going to take you back home with us.
All right, involuntary transportation. This is where like suicidal, homicidal comes in. If somebody is recorded on PD's camera and they say, yeah, I want to shoot myself, and you show up and they're like, I don't want to go at all. They don't have a right to refuse at that point. So suicidal, homicidal, any kind of out of touch with reality psych patients where they're like, yeah, the guy's out to get me and I just ran 200 miles and they start blabbing off some crazy story. They are out of touch with reality. That is a psych problem and they can become a danger to themselves. So generally speaking, if they're a danger to themselves or a danger to others, they need to go. Around here, they have a legal 2000 form. In Georgia, we call them 1013 forms. Those are basically forms that PD or an officer will fill out that pretty much tells that person that they need to go to the hospital. And then there's court orders. Yeah. All right, so the refusal of care. Everybody that is alert and oriented and they have the mental capacity and they are informed are allowed to refuse care. So somebody could be actively having a stroke in front of you, actively having a heart attack in front of you, and you're like, hey man, listen, you are going to die if I leave you here. Like, you are on death's door, and they're with it and they're able to understand that they could die. They have a right to refuse. Sometimes that can be, there's like a weird, I wouldn't say a gray line, but a fine line, because you get the people that can answer all 4 questions, but are out of touch with reality, right? Or if you go to explain to them like, hey, you're having a stroke, this could kill you, and they have no understanding and they can't repeat back to you that it's going to kill them, they don't have a right to refuse at that point. That would be like a call to medical direction at that point. Like, hey, they don't understand the extent of this situation. I've explained it to them. So that's kind of my soapbox, is that mental capacity is kind of, everyone goes back to alert and oriented ×4, but that's not the entirety of it. They need to have mental capacity. All right, so oriented. Whenever we talk about alert and oriented times 4, we're talking that they know who they are. So person, they know the place, they know where they're at. You could say, where are you at? I'm at grandma's house. Okay, that's correct. Person, place, time, and so they know like, hey, what year is it? And they tell you 1960. Obviously, they're not oriented to time. They don't know what time it is. And events. So usually you can get the answers to these questions and know if someone's alert and oriented just by your general first talking to them, like your assessment. Like, hey, my name's Becca. What's your name? Oh, it's Kim. What's going on today? And they tell you what's going on today. You know that they're alert to person and event at that time, right? So oriented. This just goes back to the mental capacity. And this is important, especially whenever you're documenting your refusals, because you want to make sure that you're writing down that that person is oriented, that they have mental capacity to refuse, and they have been informed of the risks of refusal. Because not everybody, like someone, you can tell someone, hey, you're having a heart attack, and they don't know what a heart attack is. Or you could say like medical terms, you're having a STEMI, and they have no idea what that is. So you need to make sure that you are informing your patient. Whenever you have a patient that's refusing, there might be like a weird, I've been there where you're like, okay, I'm just ready to get off this scene. But it is important that you're taking time with your patients and fully informing them about what's going on. They need to be aware that they can call EMS back. I know it sounds like obvious that, oh yeah, I could just call 911 again, but you need to make sure that they know that. They also need to understand that we are not doctors, right? So they need to understand that most of the time there's additional testing, like lab tests, those kinds of things that we cannot do on the ambulance, that we would recommend them getting done for whatever reason. So they need to understand that kind of stuff. If there is a reason that they don't want to leave, that has to do with like, well, I don't have someone to watch my dog or something like that. Make sure that you're taking that into consideration. If you can find a way around it, if you can contact somebody for them to help them out with that situation, that's also useful. All right, DNRs and POLST forms, POLST forms. If I underlined that if the patient is unable to speak for themselves. So if somebody has a DNR form and you show up and you're like, yeah, you're dying. And you're like, I don't want to die, save me. That exempts that DNR form. So if they are unable to speak for themselves, that's also like a power of attorney thing. I've been in a couple situations where the power of attorney is like, so the person who speaks for that patient is like, I don't want them to go, I don't want this to happen, or I want this. And if that person is alert and oriented, they are able to speak for themselves, you still treat the patient. The DNR forms, I think it's every year, 10 months or a year, they need to be evaluated by a physician and re-signed. So if someone hands you a DNR form, make sure that it is within date. And then there'll also be little check boxes on what they want done and what they don't want done. This comes in as like, it's a do not resuscitate form, but it's not a do not treat form. So if that patient is uncomfortable for whatever reason and you have the means to make them more comfortable, do not withhold care just because that patient has a DNR form. This does not mean don't touch that patient anymore, don't do absolutely anything. Another thing that you might see is the living wills. So usually you're gonna try and identify that. They might have a copy of it. They might have like a little folder magnetized to their fridge. So just ask for it if you are unsure.
And a power of attorney only applies when they can't speak for themselves. I say that again because you will go inside people's houses and grandpa will be sitting there and he's like, no, I don't want to go to the hospital. And then some lady comes out the back room. She's like, well, I'm his power of attorney. He has to go. Well, grandpa's sitting here talking to me and conversating with me and he's alert and oriented and able to make his own decisions. You don't have to go. That power of attorney only comes into effect when he no longer can communicate with you effectively.
Or he's like super altered. That falls down to that refusal of care, right? All right, so negligence is where something that should have been done was not done or was done incorrectly. So if whenever they're trying to prove negligence in a court, they have to prove that the EMT had a duty to act. So like if someone was laying there not breathing and that EMT has the skills and the certification to be able to say, hey, that person's not breathing, let me do this. That's going to come into play. Proximate causation is where the patient suffered harm because of the EMT action or inaction. And there's a lot of Latin words here, so I'm not even going to try and say this. But the thing speaks for itself. So it's a legal concept important in negligence cases. So if someone comes to you with like a negligence complaint and it goes to court, I'm sure that there's other people in this room that are way more familiar with the court system side of this than I am. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to find it for you. All right, so duty to act is the obligation to provide care to the patient. If you are off duty, is kind of where you're covered by that Good Samaritan law. If you're just driving, say, on a trip to Idaho, someone wrecks in front of you and you don't do anything about it, like, what are you gonna, who's gonna come back and say, right? But if you do stop to help, you also you don't want to do anything wild or extremely out of your scope of practice. So if you weren't trained on needle decompression, don't just start jabbing needles in people's chest. All right, so abandonment, this one's kind of self-explanatory. Once you don't want to abandon your patient. So like example, if you roll up on scene, you're at the patient's front door, you walk in and they're laying there unconscious, unresponsive, and you're like, I don't want to do this today, and you walk out for whatever reason, that's abandonment, right? So you have to, whenever you do patient care, like transfers, it needs to be somebody that is of the same level or higher of your training. So like paramedics can give report to RNs, or EMTs can give reports to paramedics and like hand off that patient care. Whereas a paramedic couldn't be like, oh, here, this is yours now, EMT, but I have all this advanced stuff going on. This is Good Samaritan laws that we were talking about. So you're covered if you're acting in good faith, if you're not going way out of your scope of practice or anything super wild, this law will cover you. All right. So you arrive to the scene of a patient in cardiac arrest. The family states the patient can or has a DNR, but they cannot find it. How should you proceed?
Provide care.
What's that?
Provide care.
Provide care, yeah. What kind of care are you providing?
CPR.
Okay. And so say you're in the middle of doing that CPR and the family shows up and they're like, oh, I found it. What do you do? Stop. Yeah. So you provide that care until it is in front of you.
If you walk in and they got DNR tattooed on their chest, that don't count.
No. I've had where they write DNR on a piece of paper and put like arrows where they're laying on the bed. Also don't count. All right, so another scenario. You're off duty and arrive on the scene of a vehicle crash. Police and EMS have not yet arrived. Are you legally obligated to stop and render aid?
No.
Yeah. You're off duty? No, you are not.
Just don't run up and like stop and be like, oh, I'm an EMT and keep driving, because then you kind of screwed yourself.
Or you like show up in all of your gear like, yeah, I'm an EMT, and then just leave like that might, yeah.
Yeah, that comes in the whole abandonment thing.
Yeah. I put a picture of a hippo because the HIPAA Act. HIPAA. His name's HIPAA. So confidentiality, we don't go around talking about patients and using their names and putting pictures on Facebook of a super cool wreck that I ran this weekend and 12 people died. If there's any identifying factors, do not involve it. Don't put those things on Facebook, just or Instagram or whatever you use. If there's like patient confidentiality, whereas like a family member walks up on scene is like, what's going on with so-and-so? Unless you have that patient's consent to say anything, just, tell them, hey, I can't talk about it. It's up to them whether they want to share it with you. We would all want that privacy. So just go ahead and provide it to everybody that you treat. If anyone else needs that information, it can be obtained through a subpoena, which is above me. So medical identification devices, these are really helpful if the patient has them. There's also certain tattoos that some people get that might tell you other things. They're just good to know, to have, to see. If you're treating an unresponsive patient or somebody that's altered and can't really give you a full history. I know like a blue circle is diabetic. There's a couple other ones, I'm sure, but yeah, I only know because I had a friend that got it and he had to explain it to me, and I was like, okay.
I roll up and got a blue circle on the wrist.
Another thing that's also been really helpful for me is like on somebody's phone, like you can put in your emergency stuff. If I can get my phone to go there without it. So if you hit emergency on the phone and go medical ID, sometimes people fill these out. I fill mine out because I don't like that, but age, medications, allergies, those kinds of things you can get from somebody's cell phone. So that's a good kind of tool to have in your little toolbox. Also, whenever you call 911, it goes to them, doesn't it? Yeah. So if you call 911 and that's
filled out, it will show the dispatcher.
yeah, which is helpful because they can see the notes. They usually share it with us.
It works on the watches.
Oh, really? That's neat. All right, organ donors. We talked a little bit about this earlier, the organ donation thing. We kind of live in an area where it's a weird thing. It has to go through the hospital. They make a phone call. There's certain things that need to be done before. You can check on their license whether they're an organ donor or not. If it is like relayed to you by family or whatever. If you have an organ donation center in your area, that's always another thing to know or be mindful of.
How do they work in Georgia?
I never actually ran into anything like that. Which is weird.
Because like most of the time, any viable patients that you may have that would fit under the organ donation category, you were taking them into the hospital and like resuscitating them on the way. And so that it was just a matter of, and pretty much every hospital that was in the Atlanta area that we ran into had the capabilities to be able to do surgical intervention to pull these people's organs out. So, I mean, if they fit the criteria, then it was fine. It's just a weird dynamic here because there's so many like steps you have to take, and we don't have the surgical capabilities at this hospital. So, a lot of the viable organs wouldn't make it to where they need to go just because of the surgical capabilities here.
Yeah, they have certain criteria, like they need to be intubated within so many minutes of their downtime.
Yeah.
They can't be on certain medications. The only time I ever ran into it in Georgia was when I was doing clinicals in the hospital where we like had that capability right there in the family. We were able to talk to them. All right, safe haven laws. If you guys haven't seen the videos of these little baby boxes, they're pretty cool. You open them from the outside, mom puts the baby in, closes it, can't open it again from the outside. A little alarm goes off, dispatch. Within 3 minutes, they're supposed to have somebody on the other side of that box getting that baby, getting it to where it needs to go. The safe haven laws allow a parent to drop off an infant or child at any fire, police, or EMS station. So technically, they can walk into Lander County EMS right now and say, "Hey, I got a baby. Y'all want it?" So different states have different guidelines. Nevada's is less than 30 days old and has not been abused. So there was a case up in Idaho not too long ago where a mom put her baby in there that was significantly abused to the point of death. That mom got in trouble because of that. And then this is kind of in place just to kind of prevent that harm of a child, or if someone's unable to take care of the child. Crime scenes. if you are on a suspected crime scene, do what you need to do. But like I said earlier, try not to disturb too many things. And then, like, police is going to be on scene most of the time. So ask them if you have any questions. They're way more knowledgeable about that kind of stuff than I could ever be. So, as a healthcare provider, you are a mandated reporter. So child, elderly, or domestic abuse, if you suspect it, you should report it. There's certain websites, there's phone numbers you can call. You can go to PD. Bringing it up at the ER to the nurse does not qualify. You need to talk to somebody with a badge. Human trafficking, you want to go ahead and try and identify it. Whenever we get into further chapters, we'll go over some of the stuff that you want to look for human trafficking. That was like drilled in our head in Georgia because they're so big about it there. Violence, you want to report sexual assault, restraining of patients. This comes in where you're physically fighting a patient, and you are saying, hey, we're physically restraining this patient, chemically restraining this patient, however. So ethical, so the difference between morals and ethics, this has always been a little confusing in my head until I had one person really explain it to me. So morals are your personal opinions about what is right and wrong. So if I'm like, oh my gosh, that person shouldn't have purple hair, that's my moral. That's what I believe. Ethics are the standard of behavior for a profession. So ethical expectations, we want you to be honest. If you are in like a documented situation and you're putting down something that you didn't do, that you did, or you're saying that you did it, that is an ethical responsibility. Refraining from harmful actions, work to help your patient, assist others to learn your profession, report misconduct, and treat all patients fairly and justly. That seems so simple, but whenever it comes down to it, there are situations where that is hard to do because you get somebody that's, being kind of rotten to you. But you should be treating everybody. You see the patients that are like, oh yeah, they're high on heroin, and there are people out there that are going to treat that patient completely different than somebody that walks in a business suit. So ethically, that is wrong. You should be treating everybody the same. And what questions do y'all have?
Everybody close up.
Hey, that's bright.
So
Uh-oh.
that was a lot. Thursday's going to be a little bit easier. We have one chapter that's not like super long. If you've already worked on the homework, you'll know it's not like super terrible. And then, like I said, I'm going to go to mental health class on Thursday. Just to touch on this ethical thing or the legal stuff, there's 2 cases right now that have shined light. We know that the sheriff's department and PD have been dealing with lawsuits forever, but recently 2 cases have brought them into our lights, and that's the paramedic in Colorado that gave the guy ketamine, and the paramedic in Iowa that gave a lady paralytic when she was meaning to give a different drug. And the 2 big things that got them in trouble was the things that they didn't do more than what they did. So, giving somebody, making a bad judgment call or making a mistake is going to be part of medicine. But it's the things that they didn't do and didn't report that at the end of the day is going to probably cost both of them a homicide charge and a lot of money. So just be mindful of that. It's all right to make mistakes. It happens. It happens to the best out of us. We've all done it. So it's all right. You just have to own up to it, take your slaps, and be better because of it. So, yeah.
So if you want to make sure all your papers are on the file up here, make sure everybody signed in, and nobody has anything else. You guys have a wonderful rest of your week.
Homework's due tomorrow.
Yeah.
Don't wait until 10 o'clock tomorrow night because you might not be able to get into it. Apparently.
We're going to try and resolve this.
Yeah, we're trying to resolve issues. You will have a test over all of this on Thursday. It's 50 questions. I made it, so if you don't like it, oh well. But it shouldn't. It's not terribly hard. It's pretty standard stuff. Straightforward stuff. So just be prepared for that. And
Just a paper test?
no, it'll be on. So if you have, can everybody pull up the Brady Lab on their phone? I'll bring that up.
It's really,
All right.
really.
So we're gonna have to try to figure out a workaround on that because everything, the test that we have is on Brady Lab also. If you have a laptop or tablet, bring it with you. If you don't have access to a laptop or tablet, let me know and we'll see if we can round up a couple of them to bring in and try to make some stuff, you know, try to finagle through it.
We can't overwork that router though. What about overworking the router?
Yeah, we'll see.
I got a hotspot on my phone. A lot of people have hotspots on their phone.
Yeah, like I said, the first couple of weeks is kind of, you know, kind of rocking the boat a little bit just to see what our limitations are. So, yeah, we'll work through it. And, you know, if everybody crashes out and the thing don't work, then we'll just give everybody 100 on test and move on. Yeah. That's about all we can do. So we'll figure it out.
All right.
All right.
There you go. You just have
Thank
to
you, guys.
shit, man. It gets fun after this. This is the stuff.
Yeah,
we
this
have
is
to
boring.
cover. Nobody's dropping out. We're gonna see everybody on Thursday.
Oh.